Anna had always believed that love was something you chose, not something that just happened. It's why she became a volunteer at the children's shelter in the first place. Not because she had time, but because she had heart. She first saw Ethan on a rainy Thursday afternoon, curled up on a cot in the farthest corner of the playroom. He wasn't like the other children. While others laughed or cried loudly, he sat silently, watching the raindrops race down the window pane as if he knew time better than they did. A nurse whispered, "That's Ethan. He's 6, congenital heart defect. No family, no chance, really." That last part hit Anna like a stone. No chance. What kind of world let a child have no chance? The next few days she returned earlier, stayed longer. Ethan barely spoke, but Anna wasn't trying to coax words out of him. She sat beside him, read aloud even when he seemed not to listen, brought small puzzles and warm socks. He began to look up at her with quiet recognition. He didn't smile, not at first, but his eyes softened. One day when she handed him a drawing of a sun and 2 stick figures holding hands, he touched her wrist and said, barely audible, "Is that us?" Anna's heart squeezed. She swallowed back tears and nodded. "Yes, that's us." That night she sat awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing her life was about to change. Her husband, Mark, would not understand. They had never planned for children, not seriously. He had made it clear, if we ever do, it has to be perfect, healthy, no baggage. But Ethan wasn't baggage. He was a boy with big eyes and a heart that struggled to beat, but still did, bravely, silently, persistently. By the next morning, the decision was made. She filed the first papers at the shelter. It would be hard, maybe impossible, but she would give Ethan something no one else had: a mother, a home, a chance. She didn't tell Mark, not yet. She wanted to believe, maybe foolishly, that once he met Ethan, he'd understand. She was wrong. Anna waited until Sunday. Mark always came home from the golf club around 5, poured himself a drink, and settled into the leather armchair by the window. It was the only time he wasn't rushing calls or planning deals. She'd cooked his favorite, roasted chicken with rosemary and garlic. The apartment smelled warm, inviting, safe. She wanted the conversation to begin gently. "Smells amazing," he said, loosening his tie, kissing her cheek distractedly. Anna smiled nervously. "Mark, I need to talk to you about something." He paused, halfway through pouring a glass of wine. "Sounds serious?" "It is." She sat across from him, hands folded. Her voice trembled slightly. "There's a boy at the shelter. His name is Ethan. He's 6, and he's very sick. But he's also gentle, quiet. He needs someone. I've started the process to bring him home." Mark blinked once, then again. "I'm sorry, what?" "I've started adoption paperwork. I know it's fast, and I should have talked to you first, but—" "You should have?" His voice rose. "You should have talked to me? Anna, this isn't rescuing a stray cat. This is a child, a sick child. He's not a burden. He's a little boy who—" "I don't care. You think we can just absorb that? You think I worked my whole life to build this stability, this freedom, just so you could sabotage it with a dying kid?" His words hit her like cold water. "He's not dying," she whispered. "He just needs help, love, a family. He needs medical bills, constant care. He'll drain us, Anna. You don't save people like that. You get drowned by them." She stood, heart pounding. "So we should just let him waste away alone? Because it's inconvenient?" Mark's face darkened. "You're making a choice without me. That tells me everything." Anna's voice broke. "I couldn't not do it, Mark. I saw him. I couldn't turn away." He stared at her for a long time. "Then you've made your choice." There was a silence, thick and final. "I want you out," he said. Anna froze. "What?" "You and the boy. Out of my house. I won't raise him. I won't fund this fantasy. If this is your cause, do it without me." He turned away, sat back in the chair, and took a slow sip of wine as if the conversation had ended. Anna didn't scream, didn't beg. She walked quietly to the bedroom, packed what she could into a single suitcase, and called the shelter. She didn't cry until she reached Ethan's side. He looked up at her, eyes full of worry. "Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head, kneeling beside him. No, sweetheart. You just gave me something, right? That night, they left behind the penthouse and the life built on conditions. They stepped into the unknown, her hand in his, and didn't look back. The apartment Anna found was a far cry from the penthouse she had once called home. It was on the third floor of an old building with creaky stairs and faded wallpaper. The heating was temperamental, and the windows fogged on cold mornings. But to Anna, it was a beginning. To Ethan, it was a miracle. He'd never had his own room before. The first night, Anna tucked him into a second-hand bed with a mismatched quilt. He stared at the ceiling, then turned to her. Are you sure I can stay here? Anna smiled and brushed the hair from his forehead. Yes, baby. This is your home now. Ours. He whispered the word like a prayer. Home. Each day brought its own struggle. The hospital appointments were frequent, the pills expensive. Anna worked night shifts at a small clinic, bandaging cuts, calming fevers, helping elderly patients through the dark hours. She came home with aching feet and a sore back, but her heart stayed light. Every morning, Ethan greeted her with drawings. Crayon sketches of stick figures holding hands, stars, houses with crooked hearts on the doors. She taped them to the wall, creating a mural of hope. The neighbors in the building slowly warmed to them. Mrs. Patel, who lived downstairs, left homemade soup outside their door. A teenager named Sophia helped Ethan with his homework. The world was smaller now, but kinder. Still, there were nights when fear curled up next to Anna in bed, nights when Ethan had trouble breathing, when his lips turned pale and his chest rattled with effort. She kept a bag packed near the door for emergency hospital runs. She memorized his medications, tracked symptoms, prayed harder than she ever had. One particularly hard night, as she held his hand in a hospital bed, Ethan looked at her and said, You don't have to stay if it's too hard. Anna blinked, stunned. Where did you hear that? He hesitated. That's what my last foster family said. Anna felt her throat tighten. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Ethan, she whispered, listen to me carefully. I didn't choose you because it was easy. I chose you because I love you. And I'm not going anywhere. Ever. His little hand squeezed hers. In the morning, as the sun slipped through the curtains, Ethan woke to the smell of pancakes. Anna had managed a few hours of sleep and decided they needed a celebration, even if there was no special reason. We made it through another night, she said, setting the plate in front of him. Ethan grinned. Then we celebrate. It wasn't the life Anna had imagined when she married Mark. It was harder, messier, uncertain. But as she watched her son giggle over syrup and strawberries, she realized, this life, this boy, this tiny apartment, it was finally hers. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace. Ethan was 8 when his body began to betray him faster than before. It started with small things, longer naps after school, a loss of appetite, shortness of breath after climbing stairs. Anna watched him carefully, trying not to let her worry spill over. But one morning, she found him sitting on the bathroom floor, shivering, lips blue. She wrapped him in a blanket and rushed to the hospital. The ER doctor recognized them. They were regulars by now. Tests, scans, hours of waiting. Finally, a quiet doctor in a white coat approached her with tired eyes. Anna, his condition has progressed. The medications are no longer working as effectively. It's time to consider surgery. Anna felt the floor shift beneath her. Surgery? She repeated. A transplant would be ideal, but it's a long shot. The best immediate chance is a complex operation abroad. High risk, but it could give him years, maybe many. Her voice trembled. How much? He hesitated. With travel, post-op care, and the procedure itself, about $140,000. Anna stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. She walked into Ethan's hospital room like a ghost. He looked up at her, pale but smiling. Always smiling. Is it bad? She sat down on the edge of his bed. It's serious, but we have a plan, a big one. She spent the next days reaching out to every possible avenue, charity organizations, crowdfunding platforms, old contacts. She launched an online fundraiser with a photo of Ethan holding a hand-drawn sign. I want to grow up. Please help me get there. She poured everything into that campaign, her story, their journey, their struggle. The post went modestly viral. People donated in small amounts, 10, 20, $50. Notes of encouragement poured in. But the goal felt miles away. At the clinic, she picked up extra shifts, slept in corners between rounds, skipped meals, sold her wedding ring, the last thing left from that other life. Even so, the total crept only to a fraction of what they needed. Time was running out. One evening while Ethan slept beside her, Anna checked the fundraiser again. $21,042. Still so far. She closed her eyes, tears escaping despite her exhaustion. But the next morning, something changed. The number had jumped, not by hundreds, by everything. The full amount and more was there. A single anonymous donation. She gasped and checked again. No name, no message. The hospital confirmed the funds. Arrangements could begin immediately. Anna sat in silence, hand over her mouth. She whispered, "Who?" But the answer didn't matter. Somewhere out there, someone had read their story and given them a second chance. She turned to Ethan, still sleeping, his hand curled around hers. "We're going to get you that surgery," she whispered. "We're going to fight." And for the first time in weeks, her heart didn't feel like it was falling apart. It felt like it was beginning to heal. 2 weeks after the anonymous donation changed everything, Anna stood on the tarmac of a private medical airfield, her hand tightly clasping Ethan's. He was wrapped in his favorite blue hoodie, holding his sketchbook to his chest like a shield. Neither of them had ever flown. Now, here they were, headed to a children's heart center in Switzerland, one of the best in the world. The hospital's international coordinator met them at the airport. The arrangements had all been made: accommodations, translators, logistics. It was overwhelming, but Anna moved through it with quiet determination. She had only one focus: getting Ethan to that operating table. The first consultation lasted hours. Specialists reviewed files, scanned images, performed new tests. Their faces were serious, but not without hope. "You brought him just in time," one surgeon said. "You've given him a real chance." Anna nodded, blinking fast. She didn't dare trust her voice. That night in the hospital suite, Ethan sat on the bed drawing. Anna watched him from the doorway, her phone in hand. She'd sent one final thank you message through the fundraiser platform addressed to the anonymous donor. "I don't know who you are. I don't know why you helped us. But you saved my son's life. I hope wherever you are, you feel that." She never got a reply. But another presence had slowly emerged in her life. Someone very real. Michael, the doctor from her clinic back home. He'd been the first to notice something was wrong with Ethan. He was the one who suggested getting a second opinion, who helped push for more aggressive testing. He wasn't just a colleague. He had become a friend. And when Anna broke down after the donation came in, Michael was the one who sat with her in the clinic stairwell, quietly offering his jacket when she couldn't stop shaking. Now, from across the world, he called every evening, not to ask for anything, just to check on them, to ask how Ethan was doing, how Anna was holding up, whether she had eaten. "You sound tired," he said one night. "I am, but relieved, so relieved." Michael hesitated, then added softly, "You're not alone, Anna, even when it feels like you are." The next day, Ethan went into surgery. 7 hours passed. Anna sat frozen in the waiting room, fingers laced, eyes fixed on a point that wasn't there. When the surgeon finally walked out, pulling off his mask, he smiled. "It went well," he said. "Very well." Anna exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She was allowed to see Ethan hours later. He looked small and pale, but peaceful. His chest rose and fell steadily, a rhythm she now understood as a gift. She leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You did it, baby." And in the quiet of that sterile room, for the first time in years, Anna allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst had passed. Recovery was slow, but steady. Ethan spent 2 weeks in post-op care, gradually regaining strength. His cheeks regained color, his eyes grew brighter, And when he finally stood up on his own to walk down the hallway, Anna wept. He clutched her hand tightly, grinning through the effort. "I don't feel tired," he said, amazed. Anna kissed his knuckles. "That's your heart doing what it's supposed to." The doctors called him a fighter. The nurses adored him. He started telling jokes, sketching cartoons of the medical staff, leaving little drawings by their desks. He'd been quiet and cautious before. Now, there was something else in him. Light. They returned home a month later to a different life. Gone were the endless emergency appointments. No more late-night dashes to the hospital or waiting rooms filled with silent dread. For the first time since Anna had met him, Ethan had room to breathe and to dream. He started talking about school again, about learning guitar, about maybe one day becoming a doctor like Uncle Mike. Anna smiled every time he said that. Michael had been at the airport when they arrived, holding flowers, awkward and sweet, a quiet joy in his eyes when he saw Ethan bounce toward him, arms outstretched. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't cross lines. But his presence became more constant. Dinners, walks, helping with math homework. He treated Ethan with patience and respect, not as a project, but as a boy he genuinely liked. One Sunday evening, while Ethan slept on the couch with a comic book on his chest, Anna and Michael sat together in the kitchen. The lights were low. The window was open. They shared tea in a long, comfortable silence. "He's changed," Michael said softly. "So have I," Anna replied. Michael turned to her. "You did it all on your own, Anna. You should know that." She shook her head. "No, not alone. You helped me stand when I didn't know how anymore." He looked at her for a long moment, then gently, "May I ask something?" She met his eyes. "Do you ever think about letting someone in again? Not out of need, just because you might want to?" Her heart beat faster. She thought of Mark, of that cold leather chair, the wine glass, the ultimatums. And then she thought of Ethan's laughter, of late-night cartoons, of this small kitchen, warm with real kindness. "I do," she said. "I just need time." Michael nodded. "I have time." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a proposal. It was something quieter, realer. Later that night, Anna kissed Ethan's forehead as he slept. He didn't stir. His breathing was strong and steady. For the first time in years, she looked at the future not with fear, but with hope. Mark sat alone in the office that once buzzed with staff and ringing phones. Now, the silence was almost oppressive. The framed awards on the wall had begun to gather dust. His assistant had quit 2 months ago. Investors had backed out. The company he'd built over a decade had been swallowed by a competitor during a hostile acquisition, a slow burn he'd arrogantly ignored until it was too late. His apartment felt colder lately. The new girlfriend, younger, glamorous, high maintenance, had packed up and left as soon as the money dried up. "You used to be someone," she'd said, slamming the door behind her. He poured another drink and stared at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Anna lived with the boy. The boy. The one she'd ruined everything for. Mark had followed her fundraiser out of morbid curiosity. It had gone viral in a way that annoyed him, all that sympathy for her and that sick child. When he saw that someone had covered the full cost of the operation anonymously, something inside him twisted. She didn't need him. She hadn't even asked him. He stalked her social media sometimes late at night, saw photos of Ethan smiling, drawings pinned on the wall, Anna looking tired but radiant, and then him, Michael, tall, calm, always in the background, smiling at her like she was worth something. Mark slammed the glass down. He hated how it made him feel, like a ghost outside his own life. He tried reaching out once, drafted a message, even hovered over the send button. But what could he say? "I was wrong. Take me back." He deleted it, and then on a bitterly cold Tuesday evening, the pain hit. It started as a burning in his chest. He gripped the kitchen counter, gasping. The world spun. His knees buckled. He collapsed, clutching his side. The hallway blurred as he crawled toward the door. His voice wouldn't work, no strength left to shout. Then footsteps. Faint, but there. A boy's voice. "Sir, are you okay?" Mark turned his head with effort. The outline was hazy, but something in the voice struck him. The boy dropped his school bag, knelt beside him, and checked his pulse, calmly, efficiently. He pulled out a phone, called emergency services, and described the symptoms with practiced confidence. "You're going to be okay," he said. "Just breathe." Mark blinked up at him. The features were blurry, but no, it couldn't be. The boy looked at him again and tilted his head. "Do I know you?" Mark tried to speak, but darkness swept over him before he could answer. When the ambulance arrived, the boy stood aside and watched quietly as the medics lifted Mark into the vehicle. Then he turned and walked away. Ethan never learned the man's name, and Mark never forgot the face of the child he had once thrown away, now grown, strong, and capable of the one thing he himself never was: compassion. The hospital room was stark and colorless, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor the only sign that Mark was still tethered to this world. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the harsh overhead light. His chest ached. A nurse entered and adjusted his IV line without saying much. Mark tried to speak, but his throat was dry and raw. "You had a heart attack," she told him calmly. "You were lucky. A teenager found you and called emergency services. If he'd been a minute later—" Her voice faded as she left. Mark stared at the ceiling. The memory came back in fragments. The fall, the cold floor, the boy's voice. That voice. Later that afternoon, a soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He turned his head. The door creaked open. It was Anna. She stood still for a moment, eyes calm, unreadable. Her coat was open over a plain sweater. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing left of the woman who used to glide through their penthouse in silk and heels. "Hello, Mark," she said quietly. He swallowed. "You came." "I wasn't sure I would," she admitted. "But the hospital called me, said you had no emergency contact." He winced. "Guess I burned those bridges." Anna stepped closer, but didn't sit. She kept her hands in her pockets. Mark searched her face for softness, for warmth. He found steel instead. "You know who saved me?" he asked. "Yes." He flinched. "It was him, wasn't it? Ethan." Anna nodded. "He was on his way home from school. He saw a man collapsed on the sidewalk. He helped. He didn't know it was you." Mark let out a dry, humorless laugh. "That's ironic." "No," she said. "That's grace. Something you never gave him." The silence settled between them, heavier than before. "I was wrong," he said eventually. "About everything. I see it now. Too late, I know." "Yes," Anna said simply. "It is too late." Mark's eyes filled. "Do you hate me?" She paused, then shook her head. "No. I don't have the energy for hate anymore. I have a son to raise, a life to live." He lowered his gaze. "And Michael?" Her tone didn't change. "He's been a friend, a protector, and someone who never ran when things got hard." Mark closed his eyes. "You're happy." Anna looked at him for a long moment, and then she said, "I'm at peace. That's more than I ever had with you." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Ethan doesn't know who you are. I won't tell him, unless he asks. But I won't pretend either. He deserves honesty." Mark gave a slow nod, eyes glistening. As Anna walked away, the door clicked softly shut behind her. For the first time in his life, Mark felt the full weight of emptiness, not from loss, but from all the love he had refused to give. And the bitterest part of it all, he had been saved by the very boy he once cast aside. Ethan's birthday arrived on a sunny April afternoon, and for the first time in his life, he was able to run through the park without losing his breath. Anna watched him chase bubbles with other kids, laughing so freely it brought tears to her eyes. She had rented a small space at the community center. Nothing fancy, just balloons, homemade cake, and a banner that read, "Happy 9th, Ethan," in crooked handwriting. Michael arrived early, carrying a guitar case and a wrapped box. Ethan ran to him, nearly tackling him in a hug. "You made it," he beamed. "Wouldn't miss it," Michael smiled. "I brought something special." Later, while the kids played, Anna sat beside Michael on a bench. They watched Ethan from a distance, so full of life, so far from the fragile boy they'd once feared to lose. He calls you Uncle Mike now without thinking, Anna said quietly. It just became natural. Michael smiled, but said nothing. Do you ever think about being more? She asked. He looked at her, surprised. Do you? She nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Ethan. You've been here. You've shown up every time. You've never made me feel small or weak. Michael gently reached for her hand. And I never will. They sat in silence for a while, until Ethan returned with frosting on his cheek and a grin. Can we do presents now? Anna laughed. Of course, baby. The kids gathered around as Ethan opened box after box. Books, toys, art supplies. Then Michael handed him the guitar case. Ethan's eyes widened. No way. He unzipped it and revealed a small, polished acoustic guitar, sized perfectly for a child. I know you said you wanted to learn, Michael said. I figured we'd start with a few chords. Ethan was speechless. He threw his arms around Michael's waist. You're the best, he whispered. Michael tousled his hair. You're worth it, buddy. Later that evening, when most of the guests had gone, Ethan sat at the table with a cupcake, the candle already melted. He looked up at Anna seriously. Can I ask you something? Of course. That man, the one I helped in the street. Anna froze. He looked at me like he knew me. She hesitated. He did. His name is Mark. Ethan frowned, thinking. Is he someone from your past? Yes, he used to be my husband, before I met you. Ethan looked down, silent for a long beat. Then he said softly, Did he leave because of me? Anna reached for his hand. He left because he didn't understand what love really means. But that's not your fault. It never was. Ethan nodded slowly. I don't need him. No, she said. You don't. He looked at Michael across the room, now packing up the guitar. Can I call him Dad someday? Anna's voice trembled. If you want to, I think he'd be honored. Ethan smiled. Then maybe I will. Spring unfurled slowly across the city. Trees in bloom, air warming, everything beginning again. Anna stood on the balcony of their new apartment, a modest two-bedroom with sunlight that poured in each morning. Behind her, laughter echoed from the kitchen, where Ethan and Michael were cooking dinner together. Ethan insisted on making tacos, and Michael, patient as ever, let him take the lead. It had been almost a year since the surgery, a year since the anonymous donation, a year since everything changed. And now life had texture again, color, stability. Ethan was thriving. His teacher spoke of his creativity, his kindness, his newfound confidence. He still carried scars, both physical and emotional, but he never let them define him. Instead, he wore them like badges of survival. One evening, Anna found a drawing on his desk. It showed 3 stick figures, a woman, a man with a guitar, and a boy with a big smile. Above them, written in careful blocky letters, were 2 words, my family. That night after dinner and homework and one very off-key guitar lesson, Ethan turned to Michael and asked the question he'd been carrying quietly for weeks. Can I call you Dad now? Michael's eyes widened. His voice cracked. If that's what you want, I'd be proud to be. Anna watched from the doorway, hand over her mouth. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The next morning, they went together to the courthouse. The process was long, the paperwork dense. But when it was over, Ethan Walker became Ethan Walker Miller. A new name, a chosen family. As for Mark, no one had heard from him in months. Word spread that he'd moved abroad, attempting to rebuild something of his business, alone, bitter, forgotten by most. He sent no letters, no birthday cards, no apologies. But Anna no longer thought of him often. When she did, it wasn't with hate. It was with distance, like remembering an old storm that had passed. One day, while walking home from school, Ethan asked her, Do you ever miss him? She thought for a moment. I miss the idea of who I hoped he'd be, not the man he was. Ethan nodded. I get that. They walked in silence a bit longer. Then he reached for her hand. You picked me, he said. I always will, she answered. At home that evening, Michael found them in the living room, curled up with a book. He smiled, quietly joining them, wrapping an arm around both. They were not perfect, but they were whole.